I had a good impression of her initially because I thought, well, that's all innocent stuff. That hippie stuff, that is sort of the old school left that I like.
Right.
And then I heard the clip of her having white people in the audience surround and apologize to the black people in the audience.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, okay, I'm out. This is creepy. This is not this is not the thing to do. This is not healing. I don't think. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, no, I've seen the clip and I've seen Dave Rubin discuss it with her as well on his show,
Mm.
and like I mean he had a very similar take on it as did you, and I certainly see how on the surface it really looks bizarre, and but I take a slightly different approach to it in a sense that like I understand that it certainly has an appearance of an identity politics collective blame type of thing that is really toxic, and obviously I wouldn't want any part of that, but I don't think she's coming at it from that place. I do think that her thing is a lot more to do with the spiritual aspect of it, and it's like in a sense like that what that was supposed to be. I think it was supposed to be more of a like shamanic ritual type of thing where like stuff that would happen in like I don't know churches and in shamanic circles, like when you look at it sort of like with the sobriety of a rational mind, is gonna make you want to criticize and dismiss it, right? But I think it's meant to operate on a different plane, and so in that sense, I don't think that her thing is collectivist in a traditional sense, where it's just like, oh, these people have better repent, you know, like
Mm.
it's more to do with there is there is a hurt in the there's been a commission of sins, and they seem to have racial undertones to them, and there needs to be some sort of way of cleansing society of them, and
Ugh. I
and yeah, go
Yeah.
on.
Sorry. What, do you want to finish that point? I definitely have to launch a counterpoint to this.
Well, yeah, so like
But
I
was
mean,
there anything more?
I I get that this is not the traditional sort of individualistic thing that you would want to kind of encourage. But again, like I'm not sure that what she is doing and what she has done is. I'm not convinced that that's the right approach. But I don't think that she is coming at it from a place. The criticism that is launched at her, I don't think is. I don't think that is where she's coming from. Anyway, like
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't feel
I
like I'm
agree.
putting up a very good defense here, but let's hear your offense.
I think it's not an offense, but I think I agree that yeah, she has good intentions. Like she is not one of these sort of raging social justice warriors that is well. My impression is it's not a racial justice thing where she's going to be setting some policy based on race, and the spirit of it is meant to be healing and reconciliatory.
Right.
But I think it's a bad way to go about it. It is still collectivist in the sense that so she's identifying. Um, you talk about there's this underlying spiritual thing and sins have been committed, and this is a way to or her way to try to move past it. But in that room, she said, "Okay, get all the white people get up and apologize to a black person."
Yeah.
Well, what if that white person is from Zimbabwe,
Right.
is just in town, for a few months on some kind of work exchange thing, and what
Yeah.
if that black person is from the Congo, and they have not descended from slaves. They could even be descended from a slave master,
Mm.
because the whole slavery system was set up based on local African warlords capturing and selling slaves from other tribes. So this idea that, like, well, if you have black skin, then you fall into this category in the relationship, and if you have white skin, then you fall into this category in the relationship. That's just not going to apply to everyone. What if
So I
you are American, but you're the first generation American, you're from Europe, and there were never any slaves in your history? Like, why are you spiritually associated with that group just because of your skin?
Yeah, I think it's a valid critique, and I don't know if there is a good way to kind of resolve it necessarily. I think that it kind of yeah, like if if you were to put together a some kind of like healing um, reconciliatory um, program in place, like would you suggest that you would want to like do very thorough screening and kind of like make sure like, oh, this person needs to be on the receiving end of the whatever, and this person needs to be like, I guess the idea is that yeah, like it's just sort of you kind of use the most generic um, traits and go from there, and naturally that's going to be error prone, but I
No,
don't.
I think I know I could be wrong. Like, I'm not claiming to have the answer and know exactly how the process of reconciliation across generations works. But my inclination and like my hunch as a liberal is that you move past it by growing past it, and so you have a society that's based on individualism and acceptance of individuals regardless of your traits. And then you just grow past history, and history just becomes history. Like, my sense is all of this emphasis on identity groups is actually moving us backwards. Um, I could be wrong, but I get the sense that like things were more harmonious like 5 or 10 years ago, and all of this stuff is actually going to drive us into greater division. So healing on an intergenerational thing, to me, that's pretty weird. I was listening to Eric Weinstein's new podcast called The Portal, where he was
Mhm.
talking with Peter Thiel in their first episode, and he was talking about the history of Germans and Jews. Um, and so that was a German person and a Jewish person talking to each other about their history. And I don't know. Actually, maybe that's a bad example. Yeah, maybe that's not the right example, because the Holocaust was still pretty recent in time. But my sense is like there are other grievances between groups that have been moved past, and they did so with the benefit of history and time and just interacting and being on the same level and in the same communities over a period of enough time that they just get to know each other, and they let go of the past.
Mm.
Whereas like continually re-emphasizing their differences, like I guess a better example would be an English person and an Irish person living in America.
Mhm.
When you talk to someone and they have an Irish last name, do you assume that they're going to have this grievance towards someone else with an English last name? Within the last 2 generations, they would have. There would have been tons of animosity between people who were Irish Catholic and English Protestant.
Mm.
Even in Canada, within the last 2 generations, there was a massive divide there, and now it's gone. for the most part. Like, people just talk to each other and they're not interested in that difference, and it's a forgotten difference. But imagine if it was brought up again now, and there was all this attempt to make restitution for the historical grievances between Catholics and Protestants in Canada, and we trained our children through the universities to think of themselves as Catholics and Protestants, and the Protestants owe the Catholics. And it was done with a theoretically social justice positive mindset, but you're constantly just entrenching the idea that the Catholics were hard done by the Protestants. Why would you even want to open that can of worms again? History has largely, I would say, healed that divide just through communities merging with each other. That seems like the way forward. Just allow the communities to merge, and discover that they're not so different.
What you're encouraging is interracial sex.
100%. Yeah, big time. And the modern left has actually, in some ways, started to come out against that.
Oh.
As much as you were joking, there have been these articles published in left-wing magazines against interracial dating. And that is, to me, it's a logical extension of this whole modern social justice mindset. That groups have different amounts of power, so they shouldn't be dating. They shouldn't be dating across racial lines because there's a power imbalance there, so it's exploitation. But it's an absurd but natural outgrowth of this mindset, I think.
Yeah. Well, see, as a mindset, I think it's like an interesting theory to toy with. Just kind of like see how far you can take it. What's unfortunate is that it has taken hold as a real operational and foundational mode of thinking and behavior, and that's that is the part where it gets a little bit scary. But yeah, like I guess in that sense, I do agree that ultimately, like, it's best to let the tensions resolve themselves. But and certainly, like, the recent escalations, largely driven by kind of extremist activists and a variety of media media apparatus, I think, in general, seems to be ratcheting up those wounds that maybe have begun to scar, but they're just opening them fresh again. And
yes,
what's also interesting, and just in the spirit of, I guess, healing and reconciliation, would you? That's loud. Would you consider something along the lines of what you would have, like, the nonviolent communication thing? Like, do you think there's some room for things of that nature to take place between
definitely
aggrieved sort of groups?
Oh yeah, I would love that. That's brilliant. Marshall Rosenberg, creator of that nonviolent communication concept. I would love it if he was still alive today, because he passed away a few years ago.
Right.
I would love to see him hosting a political debate.
Ooh.
Get a bunch of people from different factions and ideologies. There could be multiple events. And that one would be different political ideologies. Another would be sort of people representing different racial groups through their advocacy communities. Have them all get together under the guidance and what would be the word? The hosting of a nonviolent communication trained moderator. And you'd have a whole different approach, which is based on identifying what are the feelings and needs underneath each of these positions. And then rather than just coming at each other, trying to strangle each other all the time, then you'd have some hope for reconciliation. And he practiced this in Palestine and Israel. And he apparently had some amazing results in these conversations he would have.
Wow.
So yeah, if you could scale those up, it would be so much more interesting to see what would come out of that.
Right. And so you think that can even be practiced between groups, not just the individuals?
No, I don't really. But that's the thing. I don't like groups. The idea that a group has a feeling, because feelings at the end of the day are held by individuals only, and so there might be a group sentiment going around, but I don't think you can really give it much meaning or really do much with it until you can get it on the human individual level, because we respond to stories. Like, as humans, the most powerful thing that got people to pay attention to the Syrian refugee crisis was that one boy who was washed up dead on the beach, and that one photo. So one photo of one kid changed the whole narrative around that, because we respond to the stories of individuals for good reason, because it's really only individuals that can have a conscious experience, I think. Right. So yeah, but you can definitely like showcase examples of people that sort of represent what seems to be a dominant. So you could take like someone from Black Lives Matter, for example. They have one perspective, and it probably does represent a lot of black people. So right. You have a few examples of common feelings that are out there, and then see how they play out. And then if there are groups saying we're underrepresented, well, then you'd have an example from them as well.